Welcome back, students. We are discussing about the transportation process. Let us have a quick recap of what we have learned in the previous classes. The pulse rate is equal to heartbeat. Heart has 4 chambers. The upper 2 are called atria and the lower 2 are called as ventricles. The right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body and sends to lungs. The left side of heart receives oxygenated blood from the lungs and sends it to body parts. Rigid blood vessels called arteries supply blood to body parts and lungs. The less rigid blood vessels are veins which bring blood from body parts. The arteries carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery. The veins carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. One contraction and relaxation of heart is called cardiac cycle. It takes approximately 0.8 seconds for one cardiac cycle. If the blood goes to the heart only once before it reaches all the body parts, it is called as single circulation. If it goes twice, it is called double circulation. Blood pressure is measured with a device called sphygmomanometer. Blood pressure is indicated as 120/80 millimeters of mercury. Numerator indicates systolic pressure, whereas the denominator indicates diastolic pressure. The liquid portion after formation of blood clot is called as serum. Vitamin K deficiency leads to delayed coagulation of blood. We have learned that through circulatory system, each and every cell in our body is supplied with nutrients and oxygen to perform various metabolic activities. Circulatory system also helps to eliminate excretory substances. Then, how does this transportation process occurs in plants? Is there anything like circulatory system in plants? How materials transport within the plant? Let us see how transportation occurs in plants. What do plants eat? What do plants need to grow? In olden days, there was a prevailing theory in which people used to believe that plants grew by eating soil. Who is the scientist who disapproved this theory? He is Jan Baptist van Helmont. He experimented on a willow tree for 5 years and proved that plants get water that contain minerals from soil through their roots. Observe the plant. Roots are in the ground. What helps in the transport of water from roots to the upper parts of the plant? It is the xylem. These are tubes in a plant stem that carry water from the roots to the leaves. You have learned that through photosynthesis process, food is prepared in the leaves. Then, how is it supplied to the remaining parts of the plant? It is through phloem. Phloem helps in the conduction of food in plants. The xylem and the phloem are together called as vascular bundles. We know that roots absorb water with minerals from soil. How is it possible? What is the mechanism behind this? Are roots directly in contact with water? And how is water absorbed? Let us perform an activity to know how water absorption occurs in root hairs. What are root hairs? Observe these roots, students. When you observe these roots carefully, you can observe hairy structures present attached to the roots. These are called as root hairs. Let us see how root hairs absorb water through this activity. In recent times, people are growing microgreens like mustard and coriander on a filter paper. You can use the same process for this activity. Take some mustard seeds and place them on a filter paper in a tray. Sprinkle some water. When you water them regularly, you can observe a growth like this. The seeds start to germinate and you can observe a mass of fine threads coming from the seed. They are called as roots. Attached to the roots, there are fine microscopic structures called as root hairs. Through these root hairs, water enters the roots and enters the plant as well. Now, take a portion of the root hair and place it over a slide. Put a drop of water on the root hair. Now, place a cover slip over the root hair. Examine it under a microscope. Note the thinness of the walls of the root hairs. Under the microscope, you can observe a structure like this. Water enters into the root hairs and passes inwards from cell to cell until it gets into the xylem vessels. How does water from the soil end up in the xylem? Which process is involved in the movement of water? It is the osmosis process. Let us recall the process of osmosis. Osmosis is a process by which water tends to move from less solute concentration region, that is high water region, to more solute concentration region, that is less water region, through a semi-permeable membrane. In the roots, every cell acts as an osmotic system. The cytoplasm lining of the cell wall acts as the semi-permeable membrane. Observe the picture and notice how roots penetrate into the soil. You can observe the growth of root hairs into the spaces between the soil particles. The root hairs are surrounded by water. The cell sap in the root hair is more concentrated than the soil water. Then, how does the osmosis occur? Or how does the water move? As the roots have more solute concentration than soil water, water moves inside the roots due to this concentration gradient. From the neighboring cells, finally, the water enters into the xylem vessels. A large number of root hairs and root cells are involved. Will there be a pressure inside the xylem? Yes, A pressure inside the xylem develops which forces the water upwards. And do you know what this pressure is called as? This pressure is called as root pressure. This root pressure is one of the factors for the movement of water in xylem. To understand the root pressure, let us perform an activity. For this, you need a potted plant. Cut the stem portion 1 centimeter above the ground level. Take a rubber tube and fix it into the stem. This arrangement has to be tight, otherwise the water may spill out of this tube. Now pour some water into this tube. After pouring water inside the tube, mark the level of water as M1. After pouring water inside the rubber tube, leave the arrangement for 2 to 3 hours. After that, observe the water level inside the tube. Is there any increase in the water level? Yes. Now mark it as M2. Why did the water level increase? The reason is the xylem present in the stem conducts the water from the roots to the upper parts of the plant, due to which the water level has increased. The difference between M2 and M1 gives you the increase in the water level. From this experiment, we can conclude that root pressure helps in the transport of water from the roots to the stem. Is root pressure sufficient to transport nutrients and water in tall plants like this? Observe the plant. The roots are in the ground and the nutrients are reaching till the tip of the plant. How is this happening? There must be a mechanism, right? To understand the mechanism of transport of water in the plants other than root pressure, we will do an experiment. Take a potted plant and tie a cover like this to one of its stems. After few hours, you can observe tiny droplets inside the cover. The cover becomes moist. The reason for this is the evaporation process occurring in the plant. And do you know what that evaporation process called as? It is called as transpiration. The stomata present in the leaves helps in the process of transpiration. And do you know what helps in the stem to transpire? They are the lenticels. Lenticels are visible spot-like structures seen on the stem. Lenticels help in the transpiration process as well as gaseous exchange in the stem. What happens when we drink water using a straw? We pull the water or we suck the water using the straw. there is a pulling effect due to which water enters into our mouth, isn't it? Similarly, in plants, this transpirational process is a pulling effect. When the leaves transpire, there is a pulling effect on the continuous columns of water in the xylem vessels. The top ends of these xylem vessels are surrounded by the leaves' mesophyll cells, which contain cell sap. So, the water is continuous from the xylem vessels to the walls of the mesophyll cells, from which it evaporates into the air spaces, causing the pull. The water column doesn't break due to its continuous molecular attraction. Now, we have a picture of water conducting system of a tree. Is there any relation between transpiration and rainfall? Yes. For example, the dense forest area's atmosphere is comparatively cooler than the surroundings because the forest plants evaporate or transpire a lot of moisture into the atmosphere. In this way, the dense forests get more amount of rainfall. Do you know how much water is transpired by plants? Each fully grown maize plant transpires 15 liters per week. A big mango tree will transpire from 750 to more than 3,500 liters of water per day during growing season. Transport of mineral salts in plants. Plants require two types of nutrients called as micronutrients and macronutrients based on their necessity. These nutrients are obtained from the soil solution through the root hairs. And these nutrients are the salts which are electrically charged ions. Take an example of NaCl. It is in the form of Na plus and Cl minus. These ions are absorbed and travel with water in the xylem vessels. They may also pass laterally from xylem to phloem. Thus, mineral salts are one of the natural factors in plant growth. Transport of manufactured food in plants. Sugars are synthesized in which part of the plant? It is in the leaves. As we have discussed earlier, what helps in the conduction of food from the leaves to the other parts of the plant? Yes, that is the phloem. The phloem helps in the food conduction. Let us experimentally observe how the food conduction occurs in the phloem tubes. Food transportation can be studied in the plants with the help of aphids. Aphids are green flies which cluster around the young stems of the plant to obtain plant juices. To obtain the plant juices, aphid produces a long needle-like organ called as proboscis. When the aphid is extracting food material from the plant, kill the insect and carefully section the stem. You can observe the proboscis only penetrates up to the phloem sieve tube. This indicates that the food material is conducted in the phloem sieve tubes. After the experiment, you can observe the cut section of the stem. There you can find drops coming out of the cut. It is because the phloem sieve tube contents are under slight pressure, due to which fluid comes out from the cut end of the proboscis in the stem. Let us perform another experiment to know how conduction of sugars occur in the phloem. This experiment is called as Girdling Experiment, where you remove a ring of the bark from the shoot to expose the wood. Remove all the tissues from the center outwards. Remove phloem also. What happens after few days? After few days, when the tissues above and the below are studied, it is shown that food had accumulated above the ring but not below. The thickness of the upper part of the ring is more when compared to the lower part. There is no growth in the lower part. So, any damage to the phloem all around the stem will prevent the food from passing down to the roots. And finally, the tree will die. I hope you have understood the process of transportation in plants. See what we have learned. Plants absorb soil water through roots by the process called osmosis. Xylem vessels conducts water and phloem tissues conducts food material in plants. Root pressure is the pressure created in the xylem vessels which forces the upward movement of water. Transpiration is an evaporation of water through leaves. Biologists studied about phloem tubes with the help of aphids. Try to answer the questions given in this worksheet. Plants give us life, isn't it? Let us plant more of them. Plant a tree, save the planet. Save nature, save life. Thank you.